Welcome to another episode of... Hold on. What's this show called? It's been so long. The hyphen
I don't
show?
know. Don't ask me. I'm too elderly to remember these things.
Welcome to another episode of the Carmudgeon Show, where I say things that are inappropriate and Derek shows off his big brain.
Yes.
Oh, hold on.
And
You're not
also
Derek.
a sense of
You're hyphen.
uncomfortableness, perhaps too.
Are you saying that I'm offensive in my offensiveness?
Not to me, but maybe to the public at large.
Okay. I think I'm supposed to start with a song, and I have not done my homework. Surprise. This feels like high school. I haven't done my homework.
Yes, where you show up and you're like, oh no, I'm not wearing pants.
How... Do you have
I'm wearing shorts.
Okay.
I'm wearing shorts.
I'm wearing sweats, for the record. That's inappropriate. It's been a long time, Derek Tam-Scott, since...
It has been some minutes. It's been like since Car Week, August.
Since Monterey Car Week, yeah. So it is now November, and that was August, and that's a terrifying thought. But it's not for you trying, for you not...
Yes.
Not for your lack of
Not for
trying.
lack of trying,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Hyphen has been torturing me.
It's because I read my DMs and you don't.
Oh,
I read my DMs and people are like, you should do more Carmudgeon shows. And I was like, tell Jason. And they're like, he doesn't read his DMs.
I mean, here's the thing. I get enough IGs from you and DMs and RSTLNEs. And I get enough texts from you that are just like, Carmudgeon this week, ? And I say yes. And then it's Saturday, like 6 days later. And I'm like, oh, another week went by and we were both busy. And it's my fault. I will take the blame for it.
Are you being overworked?
I am definitely being overworked, but the slave driver who's causing that overworkage is myself.
That's why the materials you produce are good.
Thank you.
Because you give a shit.
I give lots of shits. I give such an enormous amount of shit, I couldn't possibly weigh it. Yeah. No, I will say...
And
so
on that bombshell.
Right? It's not a bomb. The bomb is a fart, isn't it? And does it come in a shell or is it a wrapper? Anyway, the latest Icons video that went live, which was Cadillac CT5V Blackwing versus, basically, BMW M5 CS with a guest appearance from Tesla Model S Plaid, had comments that embarrassed me because, I mean, the general rule is the audience is always wrong, right? Internet commenters are always wrong. And this time they were like, this is the best piece of automotive content ever created. And they're still wrong. But I'm really glad they're wrong in that direction. And it was really, really, really well received, which was nice.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so that was, I mean, this is obviously not just me that does that episode. It's thanks to the whole crew. And everyone really put in the time on the... Anthony, my director, which is a strange thing to say because it's not a director as in a... Like, he's the director of our organization. He's the guy directing the whole shoot. He put in a ridiculous amount of time in post-production together with Rob, our editor. And Anthony and Rob just killed it on this one. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was also, it was a lot of fun also working again with Randy Popst, who just like nothing broke the sedan lap record 3 times in one morning actually. And it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, we should make a thing out of this. Because like, yeah, you destroyed the lap record and then you broke it again and then you broke it again. And he does it on his first lap. Like there's no warm up. There's no...
It's always, the first lap's always as fast
practice, yeah.
Well, especially with cars like those where they're kind of heavy and hard on tires and brakes, you kind of need to come out running because you don't have... If you spend time warming up, then the performance of those components is going to degrade.
Yeah. And also, I mean, a lot of the, we call it a hero lap. A lot of these tires have a hero lap in it. It's 1 lap worth of genuine performance and then it drops off significantly. So
it depends on if they're Pirellis, or Michelins.
Yeah. Michelins, we typically see like a hero lap or 2, and then it'll drop off by 3/4 or half a second, and then maintains that. Some other tires, Pirellis, will drop a second a lap every lap for 5 laps, and then then they're no longer competitive. So and they never come back. It's not like they're overheated. They're done. So in the case of the Tesla Model S Plaid, that was a Turo car. That was not. There is no press organization.
I saw that. Yes, Tesla doesn't need it apparently because they just announced that they outsold Mercedes. without a press department. So
Right.
I guess that's why they don't have a press department. They don't need it.
I guess here's the thing. Things would be better if Elon unfucked that decision up, because we rent this thing on Turo. We're not going to tell the owner what we're doing. I mean, but of course I told the owner what we're doing. I mean, I had to call this guy and be like, okay, look, can I have a conversation with you? Like, and he was totally cool. And I don't think we told him about the lap, because I wasn't actually going to run the lap. I'm like, this isn't what this car does. And so I walked over to Randy and I'm like, okay, here's the deal. He had just done the Cadillac and the M5, and I'm like, I think I'm going to send you out in the Plaid. One lap. Don't fuck this up. Don't come back with bald tires. No moments. No bullshit. Just one fast lap. And he was like, okay. And we looked at the tires, and I'm like, what do you think they're going to look like when you come back? And he was like, no, I won't scrub them off. I won't do anything bad to them. And he went out, and 2 corners in, the radio went flying. There was nowhere to put the radio in that car, and it went flying under the brake pedal. So he went 2 corners quickly and came back in and got back in the radio and was like, all right, I secured the radio. I'm going back out. I'll do it. And we're like, oh, well, the thing's already going to be overheated. So he comes out on this lap. Of course, we're timing it by hand. We have GPS in the car, but we're timing it by hand. And we're like, holy shit, he just beat the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing, which beat the M5, which therefore has broken the record again. And he comes back in and he comes out, he's like, oh, I didn't trust those brakes at all. And it's typical Randy, Randy Pope's very quiet manner. I don't trust that. Damn, that thing, I'd have been 6 seconds a lap faster if I trusted the brakes and it didn't have that fucking stability control. Randy does curse. And I was like, 6 seconds? Are you serious? And he's like, oh man, the car just won't stop, and it won't let me go and whatever. And he's like, I'm embarrassed by that lap time. And I'm like, you don't say. So you really think you get 6 seconds? And let me tell you something about Randy will say, give me 3 more PSI in the front right tire and I'll shave 0.2 seconds off. And you do that and he does, right? So his internal brain calculates lap time as he's driving. He knows exactly how much time he's lost because of whatever. So him saying 6 seconds, I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. So he said, I'm like, do you want to know what your lap time was? And he was like, yeah, it's way off. And I'm like, it beat the Cadillac. And he was like, no way. He didn't believe it. And then, so, there's been a lot of response to this Tesla online about that it's underbraked. And, my good friend Thomas from Throttle House said that. And apparently
they were also tracking it?
They were also
what use contexts are eliciting these comments?
Partly the ones I've seen have been just normal driving. Partly they're like, so the Throttle House had an issue where they couldn't get the car stopped in time for the end of the runway, and they had a moment. I don't think nothing happened, but so far as I know. But they were just saying the car just wouldn't stop in the same amount of distance. And when I have Randy Popes who can call a lap time within 0.2 or 1/10 of a second and is accurate to within 1/10 of a second on his typical lap times, say he was 6 seconds slower than he should have been and was totally off, I think what's happened here is the car is so much quicker than everything else that it completely reset his internal G meter, and it accelerates harder than it brakes at lower speeds.
Which is very atypical. I mean, I remember from the 90s, I think it was a Bentley Turbo R ad that said like 0 to 60 in 5.9, 60 to 0 in 2.6, surely you have time for a test drive. Yeah. And so we're normally calibrated for cars to be a lot more force generated under braking than acceleration.
I do think the Model S Plaid is the first car in the history of the automobile that actually accelerates harder than it brakes. And the reason why is very simple, right? It's nothing to do with the size of the brakes, and everyone gets lost in the weeds about this. The size of the brakes really have no influence on braking performance if they're powerful enough to stop the wheels from turning, i.e. lock the wheels. So what you have is weight transfer and suspension, meaning how well is the tire in contact with the road, and tire compound. And in the case of these cars, ABS programming, right? How well is the system calibrated to maximize grip on that surface? And that's it. And so I just don't feel like I believe that there's something inherently wrong in a Tesla Model S that it doesn't stop quickly enough. In fact, we know we have Motor Trend's test numbers. It was 106, I think, feet from 60 miles an hour in their instrumented testing. That's competitive. It's fine.
Yep.
And so what I did was I pulled up the GPS charts and the traces of the run. And I have one braking zone right here in front of me. which I'll try to get an insert of, but it's tough because it's on my old PC. But the Tesla peaked in braking when going into one braking zone, just randomly chosen braking zone on this track, at 1.01 G. The Cadillac...
That's braking.
Yeah, Cadillac for brief moment peaked at 1.129. So on the initial application on the Cadillac, and I think the M5 was the same way, they both generated 1.2 to 1.4 G for a momentary braking G, and then settled in at around the 1.0, 1.1 mark. So does the Tesla. The Tesla doesn't have that initial bite, which is probably ABS programming more than anything else. But the braking distances, and if you look at the slope of the curves of the speed coming down, they're pretty damn even. So for Randy to be 6 seconds off just meant that he was expecting way more braking than he got acceleration, and that's just not the case.
Right, we're at the limit of physics.
Right. And here's the other point. An electric vehicle can manage traction by the thousandth of a second.
You're talking about for acceleration, putting power down. Right. That's why the acceleration of those cars is so much stronger for the power than, say, a Veyron even.
Well, there's that, but also you can manage it well. So you can, Tesla Model S's powertrain can get from maximum output, so 1,000 horsepower, to 0 and back 10,000 times a second. You just can't do that with traction control with an internal combustion engine, because you're closing throttles and you're dealing with reciprocating parts and your flywheel weight and all this other stuff which has mass, and you just can't adjust that quickly. So you feel it when you do adjust. You don't feel it in a Model S. And so when you're dealing with braking, same thing. You're dealing with hydraulic force moving a piston, and you have to do something with that force. So when you're feeling your ABS pump cycle as 20 times a second or 30 times a second, that it can increase or decrease the amount of force on that one wheel 10 or 20 or 30 times a second. By the way, it can't fully cycle 30 times a second, lock and unlock, but it can get, maybe 4 or 5 times a second. Compare that to a 10,000 times a second, or 1,000 functionally times a second. And basically you have far more traction under propulsion than you do under braking, because you're maximizing what's there. And so, is the Tesla Model S under braked for normal driving? No. For mountain road, a little bit. I had them making quite a lovely odor on a back road once. Not in this Toro car. We didn't do anything of the sort to that. But to another car that I drove that I did a quickie Cammisa verdict on, smoked the brakes. But I could smoke the brake in most cars on a back road. Not too many cars that out of the box will be able to deal with their own power output, and that's 200 horsepower.
In that type of use case,
right?
Yes.
And so I made a little Instagram post on it, and I used your 500e Mercedes as an example, because that I did a 2-mile hill climb for the Revelations video at the end of the video, and your brakes were on actual fire at the top of a 2-mile mountain climb. I barely used the friggin' thing, and so we hold Tesla to a standard that I don't think we would hold an S-Class Mercedes to, or a Camry to, or 180 horsepower Hyundai Elantra. It's got 1,000 horsepower, and it can stop itself from its top speed once. So can a Camry, not 62 times in a row. So that's been my interesting Tesla Model S Plaid experience. Have you driven a Plaid?
I have not driven a Plaid, no.
Don't.
Why?
You're ruined. It's over. Nothing else ever will feel fast again.
I mean, don't we always talk about how we don't want cars to be fast anyway?
I mean, not unless they're that fast. When they're that fast, then it's...
what is the quarter mile on that?
9.3 at 152.
Yeah. So I have this experience in most fast cars where I don't feel like they're fast because I ride a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And it has no mass, and so no inertia, therefore. And so the way that it changes, the way that it accelerates is not like any car I've ever experienced. I have not been in a Tesla, but it's similar. I mean, the Tesla's faster. My bike is 995 at 145 miles an hour for the quarter.
In ideal conditions.
In ideal conditions, assuming you can get a launch. But if you're already rolling and you just run it to redline in second gear, the momentary force that you get is unlike anything I've ever experienced in any car, including a Veyron, which is probably the fastest. Veyron Super Sport's probably the fastest car I've ever driven.
That's pretty quick.
So I have this experience now where when I drive and I guess that's part of why it doesn't add a lot of value for me, because it is fast. Passengers tell me this all the time, that we were going fast, and I don't feel like I was going that fast.
It's because you're a lunatic.
Yes, be that as it may, that's a separate topic. But yes, I think that being in a car or anything that fast sort of makes it so that experience is not that.
We need to go tour a Plaid and go video your reaction. I mean, the best thing I can say is, so Anthony Esposito, the director I mentioned, he has driven every fast car around. He's drifted a LaFerrari around a racetrack following some other, I think it was Carlos driving another LaFerrari around track. I mean, he's driven everything fast and nothing surprises him. So the Plaid shows up at the place we were staying for the shooting, and I take him plus 2 of the other crew members out. And it's like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm not going to let anything bad happen. But I thought, let me just fuck with them a little bit. So I get in the car. Anthony's in the front seat, and he's got his camera out. And we'll try to include the video of this, because I think I might have it. He might have given it to me. But we're in the car, and I sort of squeeze down to about 2/3 throttle. Ready? Mm-hmm. And there we go. Oh my God.
Okay, we're going 95.
That was 100
over the cat. Oh my
God. And the guys in the back are screaming. They're like, oh my God. And I lift off, and he's like, yeah, that didn't feel all that fast. And I'm like, really? And he was like, no. And I'm like, I'll do it again. And so I get to 2/3 throttle again. He's like, yeah, it doesn't feel all that. And as soon as he said all that, I floored it. He dropped his phone. He said things that would have fucking would have to be censored on XTube. I mean, oh, Jesus, beep, 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 beep. And then, of course, then the laughter comes, right? This is a man who has experienced every fast car in the last 20 years and was shocked at how fast this car was. And then, by the way, goes into a rant about, this shouldn't be legal. You think you're an old man? He's 31 years old. Like, he's young. He's cool. He likes to drive like a fucking lunatic. And he was like, this shouldn't be legal. This is not okay. And he's like, people are going to die. You know what this
sounds like is when the Lotus Carlton came out.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, this is too fast. It shouldn't be illegal. They shouldn't sell a car to the public that goes 177 miles per hour.
Right. And this does 152.25 mile. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, but the thing is, Anthony was right. I mean, the day before, I think it was, before he said that, some Florida woman was in her living room and got hit by a Plaid and killed. Her and her dog. Grandmother,
she flew through the house
and killed her, which is horrendous and it's scary. And so, is it the car's fault? No, of course not. Like, did the brakes fail? Doubtful. There was an idiot at the wheel, because everyone.
I saw this a couple days ago. I was on the highway and I saw a Plaid, and this guy was doing all this dumb shit, and I was like, man, this guy has more car than skill.
Here's the thing. That is more car than anyone has skill for. If Randy was 6 seconds off on his lap time estimate, or he thought there were 6 seconds left. There's no way there were 6 seconds left in that car. No way. He looked at the traces and was like, oh my God, the thing looks great. It warps your sense of what is even possible, to the point where it's just not, that car should not be interfacing with other cars on the road. I mean, it's just in a different league fast. My bet is, on a rolling race at 30 miles an hour, it would leave your motorcycle for dead, like your motorcycle wasn't even turned on. I mean, go back and watch the drag race video. There's one, which I probably should just post by itself. There's one shot from the M5 CS at the beginning of the drag race, and the cars launch, and the M5 was in launch control mode, and this is no joke car, 627 horsepower all-wheel drive BMW, and we all know how BMW rates their cars. This is probably actually making 700 horsepower.
Yeah.
That Tesla took off like the BMW wasn't even turned on. It's an embarrassment to that M5 beyond belief. The car just gone. And then you realize the M5 CS is faster than any car produced before the Veyron in the history of the world. So that M5 would out-accelerate an Enzo, would out accelerate
McLaren
McLaren,
F1.
leave a McLaren F1 for dead. It wouldn't even be
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
And it got its ass handed to it by that Tesla so embarrassingly. The next race, it would have just said, you know what, dude, I'm out. That's how fucking fast that car is. Too much. So, of course, it's underbraked. Everything's underbraked when you have...
I mean, for that kind of use case, if you think about what it's capable of doing in a straight line, then there's no way that it couldn't be underbraked, I suppose.
Right, because at the end of the day, the brakes can't keep up. It can't decelerate at the same rate that it can accelerate. And it has nothing to do with the car's brakes. It has to do with physics.
Yeah, sure. Or the way that brakes work.
You know, yeah, and even still, you're never going to get... So what? So, it can match it? You still, as a driver, your expectation level is always that you're going to be able to brake harder than you could accelerate. Well, that's no longer the case. You know, maybe the next generation of this software, Tesla will be able to just use regen. I mean, there's absolutely no reason, unless the battery's full, it couldn't use regen at ABS and cycle as quickly as it can under power. Because if it can dish out 1,000 horsepower, it can accept 1,000 horsepower. But, you know, it's just, this is getting absurd now. It's just stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's an answer to a question nobody asked, but...
I mean, I asked it.
Well, I mean, the whole car is an answer to a question that nobody asked. But a lot of cars that we really like are answers to questions that nobody asked.
Yeah.
So
it's awesome. I kind of love it. I mean, would I do a track?
Speaking of questions that nobody asked, what did you think of the Rivian?
Okay, so...
Sorry, so when I say questions that nobody asked, one of the things that you said to me about it, and I agreed with this, was that the first thing that we did in the car, at least that I did on my test drive, is pretty much just like off-roading. And the thing is really impressive off-road, but I don't think that's why anyone is going to buy that. I maybe a bit. Like, to me, it is the intersection of Tesla plus Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro, and then like add better attention to detail than either. And I guess the question that nobody asked is like, I would like to go adventure off in the bushes and with my surfboard and whatever the heck else I'm taking out there. Like, who actually does that? There are people out there who do that. But the Rivian can do that stuff, and it just doesn't... I guess people want that image, and that's why people buy TRD Pros, because, I mean, what percent of TRD Pro buyers actually use them for TRD Pro activities?
No, none of them.
4%?
So... I mean, you stumble on... Okay, so just to back up really quickly, we both wound up meeting each other. Apparently, it was a coincidence to us, but not to the organizers. Rivian had a customer event at Sonoma Raceway using the sort of back hills of Sonoma Raceway to let prospective customers and people who ordered cars drive them off-road. And it was set up as an off-road experience. And so we both drove the car basically off-road almost time. There was like one little sort of quarter of a mile section of pavement where we were allowed to floor it and see how fast it was. But the whole thing was very much set up as an off-road adventure, sort of overlanding kind of thing, right? That was 100%.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those Land Rover experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And so I came away with some impressions of the car, which I'm happy to discuss, but I also have to point out that it's off-road and it's not the substitute for a full review. That said, off-road, I'm not an off-roader that's kind of not what I do, but I also know, I've been off-road enough to know that cars have differentials that hang down and they scrape on a lot of shit and exhaust scrapes and,
you get departure and approach angle issues and breakover.
Right. And this thing had none of it. Yeah. Obviously, the course was chosen by Rivian to highlight what the car was, but there were a couple spots where you could see where someone went off course and got stuck and like sort of slid back down the hill. But this was serious hill shit. I mean, these were really steep things, and this thing went like a billy goat. Just didn't give a shit. Hauled 7,000 pounds. It felt
synthetic. It felt synthetic to me because there weren't these moments where it was like, oh yeah, this is a little bit sketchy and we'll sort of like physics our way back to somewhere that works. It's just like it was like a video game because you pointed at it and it does it.
Yeah. In silence. There was not a single brake intervention on any stability control, anything that I was doing.
Yeah,
If
the
anything,
hill
it was
descent
just tough
control was very neat also. Down something
has-
really, really steep and you don't touch the brakes and it just kind of creeps down.
Yep. And it has 4 independent motors, so it doesn't ever need to apply the brake to any of those wheels to stop one wheel from spinning. There's no differentials. So it's such a magic world that doesn't sort of map to the reality that I've seen before, and I can't wait to spend more time with it. I mean, I can't believe the thing is 7,000 pounds and it pulled itself up those hills. I mean, they were muddy. I hope somebody's got video of this, I'm sure, on the internet. But had just rained. It was muddy. It was slippery as snot, and this thing just went. I'm like going up this hill, and then of course they let me turn off stability control and do donuts in a field.
Yes, I used drift mode also.
Here, yeah. It was good.
7,000-pound truck with drift mode.
Yep.
I was pretty pleased with that.
Yeah.
Once my minder figured out that that's what I was trying to do, he was like, "Oh, you want drift mode?" And I was like, "Oh, there's a drift mode? Of course I do."
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we didn't get to do tank turn or any of the other like really crazy shit, so I look forward to spending more time with it. But my takeaway was like, okay, this is all really good. Like, it does all this off-roading stuff, and by the way, you can get it with an inductive cooktop range, and a tent, and 4.6 gallon, whatever it was, water tank, so you can have a sink, and like that's all awesome.
Onboard air compressor.
Mm-hmm. But what's the car like as a car? And that I haven't obviously fully experienced yet. But it sure as hell seems like a nice place to be to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, all that other stuff is bonus and probably gets it sold. It's kind of like one of these fancy apartment buildings in like a city where they're like, this has a climbing wall and this has a blah, blah, blah. And you're like, sweet, I love that. I'm going to move here. And you never use any of it, right. But it's what got you in the door. But I think that the fundamental like basis of it functioning as a device is probably going to be great. And so it's going to satisfy everybody's regular use case needs. Yeah. In all of the stuff that we're mentioning will be sort of gimmicks for most people because it's just not the way that their lifestyle is constructed. But it'll create a sort of image that's like the TRD Pro image where everyone's like, I have to have that.
Right. I mean, there's 2 things happening here. Number 1 is the image of I want to project the image or whatever. And number 2 is there's a certain anxiety reducing function of SUVs. And I think the reason people like SUVs is because they want the ability to go anywhere come hell, high water, or zombie apocalypse, right? And so, the whole idea of the original Bronco, for example, the original Bronco was a vehicle that could do what a Jeep could do, but it did it while being watertight because the original Jeeps, leaked. And it had heat. And it had, things that we take for granted, a stereo, not stereo, a radio, and a defroster, and, little sort of normal things that Jeeps didn't have. Well, Bronco did that. Bronco did the off-road stuff, but then also functioned as car. And so I think everything descends from that in terms of today's modern
It reminds
world.
me a lot of the first generation Range Rover, because everyone's like, it's the luxury SUV, and you look at it and you're like, so the luxury part is the fact that there's upholstery on the doors and armrests.
Yeah.
It's the luxury part, because the early Range Rovers are not luxurious, but they were sold as luxurious because it, like you said, had a defroster and an armrest.
I mean, because it functioned as your transportation. I mean,
Yes, you could use it as a device to go places.
Yeah.
Like
and that's something SUVs before they were really called SUVs didn't. Jeeps did not. They were not cars. I mean, they were not transportation devices. They were off-road vehicles. And we've sort of morphed into this world where everything has 8.5 inches of ground clearance, so it can be categorized as an SUV, and it's all got 4-wheel drive, and it's, a RAV4 could probably ford 1.5 feet of water and not even think about it, or 2 feet of water. And part of that feeds into, I want to be an adventurous type person, but also, I want to be able to get my kids from school if it's raining. My sister, when she first had her first kid, was like, this Passat wagon stick shift has got to go. I need 4-wheel drive. Why?
And she lives in one of those Carolina states, right?
No. She lived in Pittsburgh at the time. And the joke was, she was like, what happens if the baby needs to go to the hospital for something? I'm like, then you call a fucking ambulance, like a reasonable human being. But all of a sudden, there was this anxiety on her, like, I am mom. I need to be able to bend steel and move mountains for my child. And she went and got a Honda Element. And exactly
a 4-wheel drive one?
A 4-wheel drive, and exactly on cue, what I said was going to happen, happened. First time she drove in the snow, she wrecked it. Because she went when she couldn't stop or turn. I mean, it wasn't really a big wreck, at all. I mean, it was a bunch of scratches. But the reality was, she got out of her driveway. She's probably on the phone. This is back when, phone driving was not a big, we hadn't realized it was dangerous. And she's probably like, oh my God, my brother's such an asshole. I'm totally making it up this hill, right up her hill, and then ABS the entire way back down the other side into a bus stop. Okay. My point was, if you can't stop or turn, you probably shouldn't be going because you're a ditz. Sorry, if she sees this, she's going to kill me. But the reality is, she felt like she needed, born out of a really wonderful desire to be a better mom, to protect her child at all costs, she needed to have four-wheel drive. Did she really though? Was it really safer? I don't know. But she felt it was, and that's why Rivian is smart in saying, look at this. It can tow 5 billion pounds, and you can make popcorn. Literally, they were cooking popcorn off the stove. So it can make popcorn, and it does this, and it's got this tunnel, and you can crawl through the whole car, and it's got all these amazing features. The reality is, you could.
I mean, I think what it is, as we've talked about how cars converge on sameness, or that there's a certain level of competence that is now baked into every car, and so in order to differentiate in the minds of consumers, you have to go elsewhere other than like, oh, it can function as a vehicle better than anything else. Yeah. And they've made something genuinely compelling, certainly, and it seems to be competently realized, and so it's pretty exciting.
The crazy thing is as we approach this sameness thing, the differentiators and the reason for purchase becomes the craziest thing in the world. And I probably have mentioned this on the show before, but a buddy of mine bought an F-150 with the hybrid system and the onboard 7.2 kilowatt generator. If you would have told him 10 years ago driving his 5.7 liter Nissan Titan pickup truck that he would buy a hybrid, he would have told you to go bleep your bleep self and blah, 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 never going to happen. But he wound up buying, and by the way, does not buy new cars, will not buy a depreciating asset, really smart, consumer in terms of not losing money on cars. Went out and spend $100,000 on an F-150 because, or thereabouts, whatever it wound up being, because it has an onboard power generator that he could use to power his lake house, where the power goes out all the time every time there's a storm. And now he can just plug it in. And also, here in California, PG&E keeps burning down entire forests and therefore turning off our power. And so he was going to buy some big, enormous generator for the house and some big, enormous generator for the lake house, and instead replaced his pickup truck with a pickup truck of like capacity that also has a roving generator in it. And we had...
That's an extremely specific use case.
Yeah, but you know what? Go try to find an F-150 hybrid right now. They're sold right the fuck out because everyone wants that use case. Everyone wants that ability to say, in an emergency, I can power this. You live in Texas and your power went out and you had no heat or air conditioning or climate control last year?
Yeah, because of a blizzard.
Wouldn't have been a problem
or a hurricane.
if you had that F-150. Right.
Yes, because of all the extreme weather events that we're having with increasing frequency.
Hey, we had a weather event the other day that had nothing to do with the fact that I lost power in the Haggerty studio, or the Revelation studio, for 3 days, and I thought it was the rain and whatever. It was a rather large explosion that happened because the main feed line for our studio broke and fell and shorted out. The solution was to get an electrician immediately to get there to fix it because we had a shoot coming up. But my buddy with the F-150 is like, if you need to borrow it, just plug your studio and run it off my F-150. Like, that's really cool. So as everything becomes inherently competent, you have these tiny little, almost silly sounding differentiators that really will sell a truck. He would have never bought a Chevy full-size pickup truck. He bought that F-150 because of the generator, because everything else is frankly competent enough. And so Rivian, right now, they're the only electric game in town. There will be obviously an F-150 Lightning, and there's going to be a Cybertruck maybe, and all this other stuff. But right now, they have to show that this thing can do everything, not just be your everyday transportation. And by the way, it does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, which is...
Does it? Wow.
They claim 3.0, and then Edmunds got 3.3, I think, out of it.
It seemed fast.
Yeah. Goodbye, Veyron.
Seemed fast.
I mean, this is the thing.
I thought Veyron was like 2.5.
Yeah, in an ideal condition, weather corrected with launch control and whatever, not in the real world. I mean, EVs in the real world accelerate the way they do in instrumented testing. Gas-powered engines I don't know too many Veyron owners or Chiron owners who know how to engage launch control, much less use it. So
That's fair.
yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get a closer look. My brother ordered one. The SUV
And
one.
the quote that you said was, "I can't imagine why you'd buy anything else."
Yes, I absolutely feel that way. I mean, it's like you interact with it. I mean, it's I don't know, 75 grand. Although it seems like everything is 75 grand these days, which is why I'm not buying any of it. But like, why would you buy a BMW X5 instead of that?
Because you're a brand snob. Because you want the ultimate driving machine.
Yes, an X5, sure.
But even to your point, leave it as pickup trucks, right? The Honda Ridgeline is actually that car's main competitor. It's the same size as a Ridgeline. Tacoma's close too, but it's the same size as a Honda Ridgeline and a little bit more expensive as we had it. I think base is $50-something thousand. But the Ridgeline was the first sort of lifestyle pickup truck, that in that size category that was like, you know what, you don't really need a box, a ladder frame. You have a unibody. Let's make it efficient. Let's make it thoughtful. Honda's the company that put a vacuum cleaner in a minivan. They really think about stuff. And that never caught on with F-150 buyers, the sort of traditional pickup truck buyers. I have a feeling the Rivian will, because it can do all. Well,
because everybody who buys F-150s, I mean, the number of them that they sell, they have to be selling them to people who are just using them to get places.
Yeah. But they're using it, unlike the Honda, they're using it to get places, but know in the back of their minds that in the zombie apocalypse, they'll be able to run over zombies and not even think about it. And they can't do that in a Ridgeline. It's at the end of the day,
because it's unibody.
It's unibody. It's front wheel drive based. The spare tire is hidden under the bed, so you can't. If you pop a tire with a load of horse manure on the back, you got to take a dump of your dump. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. It's Friday. I'm so tired. Anyway, I think it's a really interesting time to be a traditional automaker. Watching. All of a sudden, Rivian goes IPO and is worth more than Ford, and they've not delivered a single car.
I think they've delivered 40 or so.
Really? Do you know any of these people? They have nothing to do with Rivian, or maybe they're friends of Rivian under an NDA. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea.
But yes, point taken. I mean,
Ford's delivered a lot more than 40 cars in the 37 minutes we're recording this podcast.
Correct. And it's not even, you can't even do that with Tesla anymore now that they're selling more than their number 3 luxury car manufacturer or something like that in the United States.
Although luxury is a stretch, but okay, fair enough.
Price determined luxury.
Yeah, price determined. Yeah. That is an interesting time. All right, so takeaway number 1 is that you need to go drive a Plaid, because you've driven a P100D, right?
No.
Didn't you?
Dual motor performance.
Oh, slow as shit. Just wait. Okay, we got to get that on video because the world needs to hear the DTS giggle. I almost got you to do it.
Should I wear a helmet?
No, because we want to be able to see the look on your face. Yeah, I'm very excited about Rivian. I hope to do an Icons episode on one because I really would want to spend some time and take a closer look.
They would be foolish not to. They would be foolish,
or it would be foolish?
They would be foolish not to give you one to do it with.
We'll see. I mean, Tesla not having a PR department, and we're back, is giving some of the other new car companies the mistaken notion that they don't need a PR company. To which my response is, where the fuck do you think Tesla would have been if no one ever got in their cars in 2010?
Yes.
I'm sorry, a PR department isn't 100% necessary, and Tesla doesn't really need one right now. It would optimize some of their coverage, sure, and when Elon makes some sort of horrible tweet and there's no one there to defend him, that might have some repercussions that would have been avoidable. But the other car companies don't. The idea that they don't need the PR is just, I think, silly. It's misguided. Like, you got to get the message out there, get the product out there, and get independent.
Yes, get the product out there, get the message out there, tell them the story how it should be told. I mean, I had a background in PR, so I'm biased. I think that it's helpful.
Look, I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing. It's one thing for me as a consumer to go spend $100,000 and then tell everyone how I feel about it. But I've really risked my $100,000. Number one, if I say bad things about it, I continue to risk my $100,000. And as a journalist, you're given a car and say evaluate this, and you have no
Skin in the game, right?
Right, I get paid either way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an influencer. I'm not being paid by the car companies. Don't fool yourself. Most of the influencers are being paid by who they're trying to rep. But journalists aren't. It doesn't really matter. It's not like anyone's like, by the way, Tesla's never bought an ad in any car magazine.
And like, heaven forbid, journalists might have driven a whole lot of cars in the past and have like actually useful things to say about it based on the experience that they have with hundreds or thousands of cars.
You mean perspective?
Yes, perhaps.
That's what makes you so amazing at driving some of these weird stuff. So let's fight about this, because there's something else that I've been meaning to pick a bone with you about. This
Okay.
NSX Type R video you launched.
Mm-hmm.
I have been on the record for years saying NSX sucks. And now you're fucking contradicting me. And so we have a little bit of a problem here. No. Tell us more about this NSX and why it's not as boring as a regular NSX is.
I think the passage of time helps. So your primary complaints about the base NSX are the suspension's too soft, the gearing's too long.
That's it.
You said it bottoms out on the nose too much, which is
too much
feature.
overhang. It's low and long, so it just kind of scrapes everywhere.
Yes, so it scrapes everywhere, which is a function of the suspension being too soft. And the gearing's too long, and the steering was dead.
And V6.
V6.
Sounds like a garbage truck.
Oh, I think it sounds great.
Because you beat the shit out of it.
Yeah. Do you not beat the shit out of cars that you're beating on?
All right, we'll get back to this in a second. Okay, so obviously the Type R is not going to fix the overhang issue, but it might fix suspension or
Yes.
softness.
I didn't scrape anywhere in the car.
Okay.
And so I did not find it to be a problematic car. Like, I don't think that car would... I guess I would have to drive it on, for example, Bolinas Fairfax Road, which is one of the more demanding roads that you and I ever use. The GT3 Touring doesn't like it there. Air-cooled 911s are very happy there. Any hot hatch is going to be happy there. So I guess I'd have to drive it on a road like that. Like even going into driveways and stuff, I drove the car the way that I drive my 964, and I had no issues with that. The chassis is buttoned down. I think you might not like it because the car is not wayward enough.
I was waiting for you to get to there. That's what I was expecting you to say. Because you said the other day, you texted me, you're like, you don't like cars that are well sorted.
Like buttoned down. But I said it was too buttoned down for you, and so that you might not like it. Because you complained about... My 964 is quite buttoned down. In your opinion, it's buttoned down. I don't think that car's that buttoned down. But...
Your 964, I have two issues with. We'll take a quick detour to 964 land. It's amazing to watch from the outside when you are feloniously hauling ass on a back road, because it does move around and it's awesome to watch. It's less fun in the car than it is outside the car, because inside the car feels so sorted, and this is where I agree with you, that like early torsion bar, like no shitty tired, no grip 911s are the most fun, playful thing in the world. They love to be 10 degrees ass first. They're walking around, you feel that, the monster in the back. Your car doesn't do that.
But you see that in my car. You see me doing that. Have you ridden with me in my car? I think you've driven it and you've watched it from the outside a lot, but you've never ridden with me in the car.
Yeah, I've never ridden with you. And the other issue is the 964's got that weird exhaust that goes to the front of the motor and connects the two banks on a long runner, so it never screams.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a nice note. It's a pleasant note, but what I prefer with flat sixes is that just
you want a 993 exhaust.
Yeah.
I think with a 993 exhaust on there where it's a dual out, then you might that might improve things. Okay. I think the NSX progression of motor noise is pretty great. It really, and it goes to 8,000 too. Mm-hmm. And in fact, driving the 964 after the NSX, that was the thing I most missed, was 8,000 RPM, because the 964 stops at 67 or something like that, and I missed having that. Yeah. So I like the noise. I've always liked V6 noise. I have weird preferences about car noises anyway. We've talked about this at length. I don't like flat plane V8s. I don't really like any four-cylinder noise, almost.
Except for the camera.
Except for what?
My bitch basket.
Yeah, it's fine, but I would still choose a
Your Mura. Yes, I know.
No, I choose a Busso or an NSX over that. I'd rather listen to the NSX than any 4-cylinder.
Here's the thing. What I find interesting about your taste in automotive sound is you don't like flat plane V8s. Flat plane V8s don't actually usually make a nice noise, but they have an incredible build. So when you're running them through the gears at full song, you get a big build and they're very talkative. And I think they sound impressive. F355 exhaust, for example, is one of the most musical sounds in the world, but the engine itself, okay, all right, fair enough. I can understand where you like it. V6s are the same way. Hold a V6 at 4,000 RPM, especially that NSX V6. It ain't music. The build is nice. And the intake noise as it builds is really nice. My problem with an NSX is imagining I'm going up to Visadero, which is a street in San Francisco that is sort of like one of the main thoroughfares. It's like 30% grade. It's hugely steep. That car has a 83 mile an hour second gear. So there is no way in hell you're ever going to be in second gear, which means you're going to be trapped in first at 3,500 RPM going up a hill, coming from the intakes, and a discordant Honda V6 noise behind you that you just want to shut up. That's my problem with the NSX.
But that situation never arises on a back road.
Okay, on a back road driving like a maniac, but you got to drive to the back road, in which case you're on the freeway. Nah, V6 for a while, I can't. But I find it so strange that you would like a V6 when you don't like a V8 when they both have that same characteristic.
It's something about the interaction between all. I don't know. I wish I could characterize it. I wish I had the vocabulary in Toolkit to describe this about what I do like and don't like.
Everyone else is fucked.
No, I mean you need to be like some kind of audiologist or something like. Or I don't know. There you have to have some kind of background about like, because there's all these frequencies that interact, and that's one of the things like the complexity of car noises. And I have no idea how any of it works. I just know that I like 6 cylinders, and I don't like flat plane V8s, but I like cross planes, and I don't like inline 4s generally.
Do you like triples?
Yes.
Okay, so you like
I've
3.
had some 3-cylinder motorcycles.
You like 3, you don't like 4, you like 5, we know that.
I like 5, yeah.
6 in any configuration?
Yep.
There are no 7s. 8s, you prefer cross plane to flat. 10?
Yeah.
Even fire, odd fire, or both?
Oh, it's fine.
Have you driven a Viper?
Not recently, but I drove a first-generation Viper. The only generation of Viper I've driven is a first-generation.
Did that have the side exhaust or the exhaust on the back?
It was a GTS. It was a coupe. I can't remember.
It's been so long. So the Vipers, you get an on-fire 5 out of each side, and they sound like actual, genuine garbage truck.
It sounded more like a truck, yeah. It was kind of truckish. It wasn't great.
But an even fire like Gallardo V10, oh, Jesus Christ. All right, obviously 12s all sound good. There's never been.
Do you need a smoke break?
What? Sorry. Yes. Okay. So I find this interesting. I'm trying to dissect what about it you don't like. Okay, but why you like? So that NSX in the video sounded great when you were coming towards the camera and going away both. So intake dominant and exhaust dominant sounded great. In car sounded okay.
It sounds kind of like a 911 in the car. Up to about 3,000 RPM, it sounds like a 911. It was really uncanny for me because that part felt like an early 911 with the dual out heat exchangers from the 70s. It was very, very uncanny for me. I think a lot of it was mechanical noise from the engine also. The combination of mechanical noise and exhaust noise was very, like you hold it at like 2,400 RPM in first gear, and it's like, wow, it sounds just like a 70s 911 in the car, which was really strange.
And there were moments outside, especially on your video, that I noticed that thing sounded like a V12 at times. There were without that separate, really higher frequency resonant. Without that, it sounded kind of 12y. It sounded good. It sounded really good. Steering wasn't dead.
No.
Tell me the truth. Come on, talkative on center.
It was talkative when it was loaded up.
A 911. You know that as you're driving along, that thing is telling you everything. I'm connected to this, I'm doing that. I just thought it was so amazing that Honda could somehow put a manual rack in that car and have it be completely dead. Totally
It wasn't
dead.
completely dead. I mean, part of it was also that car has very stiff sidewalls, and so you were getting stuff from the front end that you might not get if the car had the factory size wheels are 15, 16, I think, and this car had 17, 18s, and it had stiff sidewall tires. I did not find it lacking in that respect, and certainly off center when it's loaded up with cornering forces, I was getting all the information I wanted.
Okay.
More button down, more noise. It is marginally shorter gearing.
I mean, you're right. 444 to 420 something?
423 to 406.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it needs to be like...
Or 406 to 423.
406 to 423. Yeah, it needs to be 7.5 to 1. I mean, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. I'm sorry, with an 83 or 88 mile an hour second gear.
It's like 82 or 83. Yeah.
It's just not torquey enough to have that level of
on the type of driving that you and I like to do on sort of these, like, it's good to go back and forth between second and third. That car was happy to go back and forth between second and third gears on like a good twisty road.
Yeah, but you're implying that you were going faster than 82 and 83 or 79 in that car.
Well, no, I don't run it to the rev limiter every time.
Why the fuck not? What's wrong with you? There's a reason that red line's there. Yeah. I mean, fair enough. Moving at a quick pace, you don't have to redline every gear, but I don't want to be stuck in like second gear at 4,000 and
go drive a Type R on a good road.
Fine. Hey, owner of the Type R that Derek liked so much, please give me your car to drive on a back road.
Great.
I wanted to love that car. I wanted so much to love that car so many times.
I wanted to not like it.
Why?
Because the experiences I've had in the past in NSXs have not been very enjoyable.
Oh, so you're right. So hold on, wait. You just said that I'm right. So previous normal NSX driving is not that enjoyable.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Good. All right. So you're not wrong. I just haven't experienced that NSX yet.
Yes. This is one of those cars, like I said in the videos, like the 360 Challenge Stradale or a Carrera RS, where you're like, it looks the fucking same, and they like made it lighter and changed the suspension. It did like a few things to it, but like you look at the numbers, you're like, it's not that different. Then you drive it, and you're like, huh. It's like the difference between a 997 GT3 and a 997 Carrera S.
Yeah.
Like, think about that difference. Really stark difference. It's not as pronounced as that difference. Like, that's one of the starkest differences I can think of. That and like a 964 or 983 RS versus a standard car. So the difference is not, the gulf is not as big, but it's one of those cars where it is transformed by the stuff that they did to it.
Okay. I mean, 360 Challenge Stradale is a really great example. It's a shame that they're worth as much because so few people are going to be able to drive them. But they were that.
Can you imagine if they made a manual? Because those cars with the F1 gearboxes are $300,000-ish now.
Yeah.
And they only came F1.
I mean, here's the thing.
By the way, are, I think, going to convert a 360 Challenge Stradale to a stick shift.
Can I make a video with it? I mean...
It depends on the owner. The car.
I'll talk to that guy. That Stratos, which was an F430 shortened wheelbase converted to a 6-speed, was the best Ferrari I've ever driven. And I know, like, okay, interior quality wasn't, where you sort of expect for many, many $100,000 car, but that was some of the most fun I've ever had in a car. And that's what I want from an NSX or anything else that's, a 6-figure sports car. I want to get out and be exhausted and bleeding and upset and exhilarated and,
Go drive a 73 Carrera RS. I still think that's like kind of near the top.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, that car, my butt dyno says that car does 0 to 60 in about 5 seconds. It's plenty fast.
That's quick.
And that was outrageously fast. Yeah. Speaking of fast 0 to 60, I think that I'm planning my next BTS. It's near and dear to my heart, and nobody's going to watch it or care, but I care. Mercedes 300 SEL 6.3.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you take me with you? I've never driven one of those. Only
are you free on Tuesday?
Yep, I am now. Yeah, I really would like to.
We're going to be up in your neck of the woods. So that car invented an entire genre, and it's
of the stupid. It invented the Tesla Model S Plaid.
Yeah, it invented every single thing since then, basically. It invented the M5, it invented every AMG Mercedes sedan since then.
No, I don't think it... I'm going to have to disagree with you. Because I don't think it did handling or braking. I mean,
Correct.
Mercedes did braking. But it was a
but
muscle car.
But the idea of a fast car that looks like nothing.
Yep.
It invented that.
The sleeper, yeah.
That's what it did. Because the other thing you could get that was nearly as fast, sedan-wise, at the time was a Maserati Quattroporte 1. But that car was an exotic, and it had an exotic look to it, and it had an exotic motor, and it was just a full through and through exotic. The thing that was magical about the 6.3 is that it looks like a diplomat's car with 170 horsepower, that you see outside of the Bundestag or whatever what is that thing called, what? No, the Parliament building in Berlin.
Reichstag. Or did my allergy pill finally kick in and I'm stupid? But no,
I don't know. I don't know. And then they were like, oh yes, but it's going to do 0 to 60 faster than a 911.
That was so. I've again never been in a 6.3, but I owned a 6.9, and I remember looking back in the day, the 6.3 was way quicker to 60. It wasn't a 6.9.
It's about a second faster. It's about a second faster than a 6.9. Correct. It has four-speed gearbox. The cars kind of have slightly different characters too.
Doesn't have a torque converter in it.
Is it really? The four-speed doesn't.
The four-speed has a viscous coupling, which is a torque converter without the torque multiplication properties, which is why it had a 4-speed. So it had a really low first gear to get it off, and then get it off the line. And then the 6.9 got the 3-speed with a torque converter, and that was enough. Interesting. They were genuinely rocket ships for the day.
Yeah, and it's rated at I don't know, depends where you look, but it's kind of like 250 horsepower and 370 torque. The numbers aren't that impressive, but I think that it was Mercedes underreporting things because everyone with sort of American muscle cars is like, that thing just dusted me. And so I would love to get into the specifics of that. It'd be nice to dyno one.
I was going to say, let's dyno it. I'll meet you at the dyno shop on Tuesday.
But the way that it kind of delivers power has got this sort of 60s brutality, but then you put it in this very high quality Mercedes wrapper. It's just this very strange collision of attributes in one car in a way that was so off the beaten track for what anyone else was doing and super, super off the beaten track for what Mercedes was doing, which was a bunch of well-engineered, stodgy, old man, businessman, politician cars. And then this random thing comes out of it. It's a great story behind its creation too. And then, by the way, they decided to take it racing, and it got second in the Spa 24 Hours behind a Capri. What the shit?
So awesome! It's so cool.
Anyway, so it's a super cool car. Nobody's gonna watch it or care. But
I'll watch it.
I think that story is a great one. So
I can't wait.
Excited to.
It really is. If you think about it, the whole idea of a Plaid, right? It's an anonymous looking. No spoilers, no tacked on anything, no bullshit. You got to know if you've got to know. But it just happens to. It's a luxury sedan that happens to be outrageously supercar fast. And I guess you could say there was 6.3, 6.9. That was identical in terms of lineage of what they wanted to accomplish, right? The ultimate luxury sedan with rocket ship power. And then I guess you had 560 SEL. That was after that, and then the V12 cars, the 140, 600.
Yes. But notably not the 500e, because the 500e, they're like, oh, we should make it handle.
Yeah, 500e was its own thing. That was Mercedes chasing BMW, and getting a half the way there in terms of handling and whatnot. It's still
splitting the difference between a 6.9 and or that kind of fast barge and an M5.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is now, everything has to look different. I mean, the Plaid does look different. You see a Plaid on the road, and you're like, oh, it's low. It's got a body kit on it. The wheels are bigger. It's got more of a chin spoiler.
Really?
If
you can tell?
Yeah, I could tell. When I saw one on the road the other day, I was like, oh, that's a Plaid. And the other one I saw recently on the street, I was also like, oh, that's a Plaid. The 6.3 and the 6.9, literally no change except for the tires are wider. And you have the 4 headlights in the front for European cars, and there's a badge on the trunk lid.
In the 6.9, they had a different bumper. They had a wrapper.
Yes, in the U.S., they had more black on the bumper in the U.S.
And fog
for the U.S. bumper cars.
But yeah, no, they really were. Funny that you say that about Plaid, because I seen a couple in traffic, and I'm like, it's a Model. Oh, it's a Plaid. I mean, it just looks like
Every
a Model
time
S,
I
but a
see
little
one,
bit
I'm like,
better.
but it's enough that there's actual visual differences.
Oh yeah, there are.
Like, if you put them side by side, you're like, oh, now I see it. You literally put a 6.3 or 6.9 next to the standard car, and there's no difference except for the width of the tires. And on U.S. cars, the bumpers have black trim on them, more black trim on them on the 6.9.
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool car.
Anyway.
Speaking of things that don't look different, I just drove a Corvette ZR1, the original 1990.
That car is wider?
This is the crazy thing. That car is 3 inches wider than the regular Corvette. And, you know, a 1-inch extension's a lot. 3 inches wider. You can't tell.
I can't tell. I learned that recently. I've been watching just a shitload of Motor Week retro reviews.
We're glad to have you with us.
Yes. Welcome to Motor Week. We're glad you're with us.
Owings Mills, Maryland, 21112. I mean, this is...
7. 21117. Yes.
Oh, whatever. 2111 something. So funny.
I've been watching a shitload of those, and I was watching the one about the ZR1 yesterday, and he was like, it's 3 inches wider, and I was like, you don't say.
Yeah.
You would have thought that you would notice something that was 3 inches wider.
You would think so, but, I mean, apparently not, and that's one of the reasons it didn't sell. So, Revelation's coming on that one. That was fucking magnificent.
I've never driven one.
I love it when I expect to just hate a car, and I'm like, oh, doing this episode on this car because it's a really cool story, but man, is it going to be a pile of shit? No. I mean, the interior shit.
I mean, that's what I felt about the NSX Type R, and so I wasn't even going in with, like, these huge expectations, it's going to be awesome, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, maybe part of it was the road that I drove it on, but I don't think that was exclusively it. But that's the kind of road that calls out something that's shitty, and I had an absolutely awesome time on a great road with the car.
Wow.
But yeah, ZR1 I've never driven. I'm interested now that you said that it's good, because my assumption is that, like most C4s, it was going... What did I sent you this 5-way comparison that what Car and Driver did with the NSX, the ZR1, the 964, the 348, and the Esprit Turbo.
Yes.
And this great tagline about the ZR1, what was it?
The quote made it into in the Revelations episode. This car is a rolling embarrassment to America until you step on the gas. And I just thought, wow, I get shit for being harsh on cars these days. A rolling embarrassment to America. Like, not to GM. No. Not
the
to
entire
Chevy
country.
Division, not to the Corvette team, to the whole country. Like, holy shit. And I see where that came from, right? I mean, in just, you know, we always
It's not a complete car.
It's a...
You couldn't even think the idea without laughing.
The C5 has 4.7 times the structural rigidity of the C4. Okay? Like, normally you're like, we've increased the structural rigidity by 111%. That would be ridiculous. It's usually 25, 40%. Whatever, 40. Right? 470. And the reason was, the coolest thing about this, I have all those books right over there. The coolest thing about this episode, doing the research on the ZR1, is Mike McClellan, the guy, Dave McClellan? McClellan, whatever, the chief engineer for the car, wrote a book about the complete history of the Corvette. And so it's not just third-party information about the car, it's
I love when books like that exist. Because when you and I are making these things, when you don't have like a sort of tome about the book that gives you all that information, like the McLaren F1 book is great. If you ever do a Toyota 2000 GT episode, like there's a great book about those. There's certain cars have that volume about them, and you're just like, man, this is the good stuff.
Let me tell you, the ZR1 was doubly awesome because not only did McClellan write the book, where he said, by the way, the reason the car had no structural rigidity is because it was supposed to have a T-top bar, and at the last second, corporate was like, no T-tops, has to be a single piece. And they're like, we engineered the whole car to have a T-top bar and doesn't have any structure, and they're like, tough titty. And he said we should have killed the whole project and started over, and it would have delayed the car 2 years, and it would have been worth it, is what he said in the back. So the car has no structure at all. But not only
do you like it in spite of that?
Yeah, I liked it in spite of it. And look, my Volkswagens have no structure either. Come on. But the other part was that there's another book, an entire book written on the LT5 engine, which was the highlight of that car. So I read. I mean, I wound up reading I think 5 books and like 900 pages worth of research went into that Revelations, and I uncovered some
This
stuff.
is the
that
one
I never,
episode of Revelations that you've never consulted the D. Tam-Scott library.
It's true, yeah.
For
I didn't
source
ask you
material.
for it, but I got them all, and they were all available quickly, whatever. But there's just so much written on the car. But it's my goal to always uncover something that I've never heard before that isn't readily available on the internet, and that the owners of the car, who are total nut job nerds about these cars, also don't know. And I found a couple things on LT5. But there's a guy who wrote a book just on the engine, and he was like there for the interplay between Lotus. So it's 100% Lotus motor. Everyone thinks it's a Mercury Marine motor. It's not. Mercruiser built it, but Lotus 100% designed and engineered that entire thing based on a 4-cam motor that they did for the Lotus Etna show car. Different story. But just the fact that there's a whole book on the interplay between the Corvette guys, Lotus, and then ultimately Mercruiser. Oh my God, coolest details in the world.
I love stuff like that.
Coolest, yeah.
I mean, I guess that's why we like doing what we do.
That's why you do BTS and I do Revelations. I mean, that was... I
Yeah,
think
because it's a reason to read books that you've always wanted to read but never otherwise would have a reason to read them.
Yep. I'm going to take some vacation time finally here coming up, and I'm going to take that McClellan book with me because I didn't read the section on the mid-engine Corvettes that Zora wanted to do, and it's all in there. It's all there. Like, from the horse's mouth, from the guy who told Zora, like... or was there when corporate told Zora, you're not doing a mid-engine Corvette unless it's a rotary. Yeah, the mid-engine Corvette was going to be a rotary. I mean, there's just so much crazy shit that I can't wait to read that.
Wow.
And we still owe our audience a Piech episode.
Well, you have the book and it's not in English, so you have to take the charge on that.
It's
Unless
literally...
you want to translate it for me.
Right here, I'll translate it for you. It's right here, and somebody just DM'd me last week about it. I'm like, I don't even have the courage to respond because I feel so bad about this.
If you can somehow get it in English, I'll do it. I'll read it. I don't speak Deutsch.
Yeah, I know, but it's 280 pages.
Is there there's got to be an app for that.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, take a picture of a Google Translate. It'll just translate. It'll be perfect. It'll get every word right. Oh my God! Here's the whole story about Lopez. Oh my God! I have to read this. You know what Lopez? You know the whole Iggy Lopez story. He left. Hold on, let me get this right. He left GM and went to Volkswagen in the early 1990s and took all of GM's secrets. Ignacio Lopez was his name. And then wound up getting sued over this and fired, and it was this big, huge, enormous thing. That might have been one of the reasons, I think the timing might be wrong for this, but I always suspect it was the reason why Volkswagen wound up with a VR engine, because GM had been experimenting with that. But anyway, he took a whole bunch of corporate secrets, got very much sued, wound up, I don't know if he ever went to jail, but then he wound up in a very mysterious car accident and disappeared. And this all happened while I was in high school in Germany and his daughter was in my homeroom. And one day, she was just gone. They all went to hiding. It was nuts. So if there's a whole section on him, I really want to read this book because I want to know what the fuck happened.
Well, take it on your trip with you.
That's a good idea. I will do that.
And then maybe it won't be August, September, October, November. 3 months till the next Carmudgeon.
This is embarrassing.
I mean, I think we have a topic for the next one anyway, which I think should be interesting after your trip.
Yeah.
Well,
do you see the amount of
immediate
topics I have listed on this blank piece of paper?
Yes, there's many of them.
This is how much homework we did for this episode, guys.
Yeah, we never do that. That's why the Piech episode's taken so long, because it takes us.
Because it's going to require
it requires homework.
Yeah.
For which the bandwidth does not
exist. I bought the McLaren book. I need to read that. I haven't even opened it yet.
Driving Ambition?
Yes.
Yes.
I bought the McLaren book, and then the M1 book. I can't find a friggin' M1 to do a Revelations on.
BMW M1. There's a book about the BMW M1.
There's a book about it. I don't remember if it's in German or English.
I bet that's
but I haven't even cracked it
fascinating.
open. Yes. Talk about a story.
The whole Lamborghini connection and all that stuff.
Find me an M1 to do a Revelations on, and then I don't have to sit and talk to you about it. I can talk to the camera in Revelations.
Okay, so after you take your time off, we can do the next episode, which is about. We shouldn't preview it. We'll see if it might not actually be the next episode anyway.
We'll see. Maybe we could do it before then. I mean,
It's
only
got to be
November 12th.
after your Thanksgiving trip.
A month from now, I'm doing a big road trip, I hope. And that'll have something to talk about. But in the next month, maybe we can do another Carmudgeon. If people like and share this episode, here's how we can end this.
Yes.
If you don't like and share this thing, we're not doing another one.
And subscribe, all that stuff.
Oh, subscribe. Yeah, that's also true. All right. Well, I think we're done. I'm going to go not read my PS book, but the record do want
just the same damn thing you've been doing for the last year.
Look, the amount of books I have here. Look, you bought me. Derek bought me a book on Corrado and Scirocco while he was on vacation, and I haven't even opened the wrapper yet. It's still in plastic.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
it's
saw
not
it there,
for
and it wasn't in English, and I was interested. I figured that
I'll be honest
could
with you.
make sense of
I
it.
did read the sort of thing on the back where it tells describes the
Synopsis.
book. Sounds really good.
All right.
It was, it's basically insulting Volkswagen and saying they had no choice because they'd been building a shitty ass Beetle for too long and they needed something cool. So they just
Right,
showed up.
and they were going to do the EA, whatever became the 924,
Yes.
and that ended up not materializing.
If you need to know more about that story, you can find out all about it in the Revelations Porsche 924, 944, 968 episode, available for free.
And now a word from our sponsors. Ah, shit.
Haggardissimi?
Haggardissimi?
Haggardissimi.
All right.
All right. Well,
Good
it's been
chat.
fun, as always.